Welcome, everyone. We are live, day 2. I'm Ari, and I'm here with Belinda Kou. Hi, Belinda. Welcome back.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
We already have a few people that are in the chat saying hi. Robert is back. Ferry, Viola, Cody, Paco, Peter. I'm based in San Francisco. Belinda is based in Chicago. Let us know where you are, and we'll say a special hello to your city or country. And Belinda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Belinda Kou. I was here yesterday, and I am a lettering artist and illustrator based in Chicago. I've worn many hats in the past. I've been a graphic designer, an art director. I have a degree in biopsychology. I was a middle school teacher. So I'd be happy to talk more about my nonlinear journey today if you feel like you're kind of in that position of, branching perhaps into freelance. And I'm excited to show you what we're going to be working on today. We did a single letter yesterday, and today we are upgrading to phrases.
Yeah, so if you missed yesterday, you can watch the replay where Belinda created this D that she illustrated using foods from a dim sum menu. And speaking of replays, there's so much you can watch. If you also missed just before us, Paul Tranny was doing one of the days of the Photoshop daily challenges. He's on week 2 of that, and he was working with shapes and text today. So tune in every day, 9 a.m. Pacific, to catch those as well. And I see we have more people saying where they're from. Oyvind is from Norway. Megan is from Western Canada. Vernon's from Cincinnati. Lucette from New York City. Hi, Chris. So lots of people joining. Thank you so much for joining. And we can jump right into your project for today. So we're in Adobe Fresco.
Yeah, so we are going to keep up with our food theme. I saw some people were saying that they brought their snacks this time, which is great because you'll probably still get hungry with today's. And we're also going to keep up with our steamy stream theme with today's phrase, which yesterday, some of you guessed correctly, it's going to be focused on hot pot. So I will go ahead and share with you what that phrase is going to be. And I guess because I'm a mom, you could call it a mom joke, perhaps. It's going to be, hey there, hot stuff. So we're going to be focusing on taking this phrase and making it into a fun hand-lettered visual piece that will have this lettering as well as our usual explosion of foods. And we'll use some cool tricks in Adobe Fresco to get that working. So I think we can jump straight into the brainstorm, which is similar to what we did yesterday. So when you're thinking about hot pot, which is a great meal that you can enjoy often with family, usually when it's cold out, but you can still do it when it's hot out if there's AC in the house. What kind of foods are good to include in hot pot?
All right, let's start hearing it, everyone in the chat. What do you like to put in your hot pot? We have some new people joining. Tavian from Florida, baby. Fabio from Milan. Be Creative from Orlando, Florida. Emmanuel, hi. Jimmy's from China. General Kenobi, hello. Cody Bear says sriracha. I think we have to do that because we said it yesterday too.
Yeah, sriracha. We can have like chili.
I like it when they have those little mushrooms that have like a long, I don't forget what they're called. They're like little cap and then a long stem, and they're in this bunch and they look so pretty in that hot pot.
Yes, gnocchi mushrooms.
Yes.
We can have those. There's also shiitake mushrooms. You want to do more mushroomy.
Paco says pot stickers.
I guess you could put that in a hot pot.
You could can you put anything in there?
I'm pretty sure you can.
Are there rules?
I don't think there's no rules. It's going to be today's recipe with our Adobe family. So
Nung says fish balls. Ferry says beef. Jackie says Kansas. I think Jackie is saying they're from Kansas, not to put Kansas in the hot pot. Although
probably not.
There's no rules, so.
No rules. We can also sneak that in there somehow.
Chris says hard-boiled egg.
Yeah.
With a question mark. He's unsure.
Or we could just do like an egg. I've had my parents, they would often, I don't know if it's a Taiwanese way of doing it or not, but one of the sauces that you mix for the hot pot to dip stuff into includes a raw egg yolk with this the sauce that comes in this gray can, and it's very savory. And you mix that together, and then the egg white goes into the hot pot. So we always had, my brother and I would have fun fishing it out to dip it with the sauce because it's a really good combo.
Carolyn says meatballs. Megan says garlic. And then there's a lot of love for mushrooms in the chat. Everyone loves mushrooms.
All
I'm
right,
happy to hear it.
Mushrooms in here for sure.
Noor says Chinese cabbage. Lots of good suggestions today. Hoisin sauce.
This one down, there's bok choy, some sort of veggie. Spinach.
Yeah, we need our greens.
And one thing that I like to include, because I always thought it was very interesting when my parents would have it, is I think it's a lotus root.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I love the texture and the holes in it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Megan says tofu. I forgot about tofu.
Yeah, we should definitely have tofu. That's a great one. All right. I think this is good. If anyone else has any more opinions, feel free to chime it in and we can sneak that into the composition. We're going to go right into the sketching part. So these foods, I'm going to pick and choose which ones will work best. And a lot of times it's a matter of what is your gut telling you, your stomach, and then also what kind of shapes would be really interesting to work with. And you just find a happy medium with that combination. So it's very mix and matchy, which is pretty fun. And what we'll do now is I will show you this part just for the sake of time so that we can jump more into execution and less of the sketchy phase. But the next step that you would do once you get this list is figure out how to prioritize your phrase. So for example, what I often tend to do is I will pick like a magenta color and I will just look at my phrase and figure out what I want to stand out the most in terms of the hierarchy with your lettering, because we're working with more than one letter today. So we want to be able to, at a glance, see how that phrase is going to read. So when you look at, hey there, hot stuff, what do you think the most important words to stick out would be?
Let's hear it. What do you guys think? This is a really important part of the exercise. And I think it's good that you're pointing this out because there's a million ways to prioritize different words in a phrase, whether it's the size of the word, if it's like ordered top to bottom, if it reads left to right, if it's in all caps versus lowercase, if it's a different lettering style than the rest. So you could apply so many of these things, and figuring out where to prioritize that is really important. People are saying hot is the most important word, and then stuff.
And stuff.
Lucette, Chris, Steve, Robert, Be Creative, they're all saying hot. And then Carolyn says hot, then stuff.
Awesome. Yes. So I would agree with that. And a lot of times it can be just what you want to highlight in the phrase too. So, if you really want to be kind of sassy, I suppose, like sassier, you can make the hey there kind of stick out a little bit more too. But yeah, hot and stuff are good words to prioritize. And what I like about this box method is you can start to chunk out your words into how long and short your phrases are. And then when you start to build out your layout, you can work with the shape of the box as opposed to the letters and the words. And that will help you to adjust your composition in a more simpler way than getting caught up in what each of the little letters look like. So for example, you can say, hey there, and then hot stuff. So 2 little lines to represent the fact that they are less important to showcase, and then 2 bigger boxes to represent how you want to, bring it out, which, as Ari said, it could be a style, it could be the scale, it could be a lot of different types of things, and we'll work with some of that today. All right, so we have brainstormed and we have prioritized our phrase, and I very quickly sketched out 3 different ideas for what that composition can look like. And I'm going to show you exactly how messy my sketches are. So I'll just turn this off. I took a photo of it, so it's going to look even worse because it's like photo in bad lighting. But just to give you a sense of how messy I start out like this. So I take a very soft leaded pencil and I sketch it at about this size, like only about 2 inches tall. And I try to stretch it to be at least 3 ideas or even 5 so that you're not just, going with the first idea that comes into your head, but you're challenging yourself to stretch those ideas out. And maybe something after that first idea is actually going to be better. So I always recommend doing at least 3 to 5 at the tiny thumbnail size so that you're not feeling overwhelmed that you have to draw a ton, but you're at least getting your brain to work out those ideas onto paper. So just to explain to you what you're seeing here, this first one is the first one that came to my head, which was if we're going to play with hot pot themed messaging, maybe we can play with the temperature of it and have that be the focus of the concept. So it's going to be lettering in a steam cloud, and the food, which is always going to be exploding for me, is going to be around that steam cloud. And then I thought to myself, well, if I don't want it to be in a steam cloud, because oftentimes when, at least for me, when I'm drawing stuff in Steam, it's usually a cutout so you can see the background. So maybe I want to play a little bit more with the letters themselves. Maybe it can be more of a temperature based thing. And you probably will know based on our earlier suggestions that we're going to be leaning towards this composition, but we can have, I think I said temperature, I meant spiciness. So like we'll play up the spicy factor of our hot pot. So, hey, there could be a script and it's going to be sriracha, and the hot stuff can be the broth, which is also spicy if you put your sriracha in there, or chili peppers or something like that. And then the third idea was perhaps we can put it into a shape like the hot pot itself. So it's literally in the hot pot. So those are just 3 ideas that you can start with. And you're challenging yourself to pull your idea based on the concept that it's focused on, as well as just visually what that can look like. And this is going to be the winner. The way I pick it for personal work is literally with my gut. What gets me the most excited is what I'll draw. So obviously, if it's for client work, you have to decide a little bit differently, but that's how I pick it for personal work. So
yeah, I'm excited to see the sriracha script.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It's a pretty simple way to build it out too. But here I took that same image and I just scaled it to the size of the canvas, which is a great little hack to get over the fear of a blank canvas by drawing that tiny thing in your sketchbook and then scaling it up. It doesn't look great, but at least it's filling up the space and giving you an idea of where you want to put everything. And then the next step that you'll do once you scale it up, turn down that opacity for just a light guideline, is you start to just sketch away what that's going to look like. So this layer, I'll just start a new layer and pick out a pencil and still keep it a little bit thicker for now so that I'm not getting caught up in details, but just getting my composition into place and cleaning it up so I can actually see what I'm looking at, because right now it's a little bit messy.
Let us know if you have any questions for Belinda while she's working. And also just pointing out that today we have an artist spotlight coming up later in the stream. You can see above the chat here on Behance, there's an artist spotlight tab, and that's a place where you can suggest people to spotlight for next time. So towards the end of the stream, we'll be showing off an artist and we can enjoy looking at their work, and then you can also submit someone for another stream. Belinda, what are the dimensions of the artboard? Chris is asking.
I often like to work at 8 by 10 inches at 300 DPI. So it's a nice size for you to print at if you wanted to print. And I often don't print my stuff. So 8 by 10 is large enough for me. But if you think you're gonna, want to print at a larger size, you can scale up more. So right now I'm just laying them out. And when I do lettering that's in a phrase, I like to, at the sketch phase, keep them all on separate layers as well, because what ends up happening is I often, need to shift things around to get them lined up, or I might change my mind about the size of the scale of something. So I keep them on separate layers just to, make it easier to adjust later on.
Laura asked if you always sketch on paper or do you also use digital tools for the sketch phase?
I like to start with paper just because I find it to be less intimidating. I think it might depend on how your approach is to tools, but for me, when I get into the digital tools, I'm already kind of wired to think I'm finalizing something. So to avoid trying to be too precious with the kind of sketching I'm doing, I try to force myself to start on paper first. If I feel like I don't have time, because there are moments where I think I don't have enough time to do that, I'll sketch something, but like still super tiny in the canvas and then scale it up that way anyway. So at least I'm still kind of working with that scale thing that makes me a little less intimidated.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes the best things I've ever sketched are on a corner of my notebook for work, or I'm writing notes for a meeting, and then there's like this tiny thing. I'm like, wow, that looks so good, because I was just free to experiment.
Yeah, like you're just letting your brain do its thing and get it onto paper without letting your perfectionist side try to make it, a perfect piece of artwork already.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm thinking this will be more of the liquidy sriracha, and then this will be the other liquidy broth. And I can play with the scale a little bit. Like I think hot can get bigger since we wanted that to be the main priority. And it's going to look like it's, the first priority because it's also this blocky letter. And it's only 3 letters at that scale size. So that will make it stand out more.
If you have just joined and you weren't here for the beginning of this, Belinda is here for her second day on Adobe Live. Yesterday was, again, in Fresco, illustrating a single letter and showing how she incorporates multiple different illustrations in that shape. And then today we're lettering a phrase. And as you can see, it's "Hey there, hot stuff." And there will be hot pot food items floating around, and we get to see her process. You can watch the replay of yesterday if you've missed that. And if you're watching on YouTube, head over to Behance, because that way, if you chat, we can see what you wrote in the chat. You can ask questions or just say hello, and we will say hello back. Let us know where you're from. If you have just joined, tell us where you're from, tell us what time it is there. And if you're hungry, we're all gonna get hungry. It's just inevitable. Yesterday, I ate lunch so fast after our stream. I had some dumplings in the freezer that I immediately pulled out and steamed them. I was like, I need dumplings.
I definitely did spend a little bit of time looking up air fryers after our stream.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I think I want one now because that sounds so good.
I actually air fried a croissant this morning for breakfast because it was like 2 days old and it wasn't crispy anymore.
Oh.
Stuck it in the air fryer for 5 minutes. It was good as new.
That's nice.
So yet another use for it.
All right. I think by the end of the stream, I'll be convinced and probably buy one. All right. So I have my lettering here. I've got my hot pot here. This is like a little scooper thing that you can use to scoop out stuff from the pot, which we never got as a family until years later. And I was like, why didn't we get this? This is so nice compared to just chopsticks. But it's like basically one of those mesh spoons that lets the broth drain. And I thought it might be cute to put a little heart in there because it's like a love letter to your food, which you might think more about when you're getting hungry. And then I also just like that hot pot is another shared meal, and it's often one that you share with friends and family, like people you're close to and not opposed to, like scooping out of the same place that you're cooking. So it's kind of gives you warm feels.
Bagus says, hello, it's 11 p.m. right now. All right, a little bit later than us. Maybe it's time for your midnight snack.
I'm going to just move my list over here so I can reference what type of food I want to include here. So we're thinking we want the mushrooms. And I'm still in sketch phase, but I'm just going to start to indicate where they're going to go. So here it's the broth, and maybe we give that some movement so it looks like it's spilling out of the pot a little bit, which it wouldn't happen in real life, but because our food is exploding, it'll be a fun way to just add to that movement. You can put the mushrooms right here. And as you can see, I'm kind of just indicating it with like blobby shapes, just so I can see compositionally how that will work. We can put some of the, maybe like bok choy can be here too. And they're just kind of sitting in there. And then I know we like mushrooms.
Welcome back. Also, Allison Hagio, I think, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Allison says, hi, Belinda. We went to design school together. So proud of you. Shout out from Chi-Town.
Thanks, Allison. Yeah, I met Allison through the student of the Typographic Arts Society. I can't remember what it was called anymore, but that was something that got me into lettering when I was in design school, was being part of this organization with her. And we got to host art shows and have like a prompt for lettering to kind of create stuff out of. And that was sort of my first step into creating work for lettering, was that organization.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, so I'm thinking about where the mushrooms are going to go. I'm thinking about how many I want to. So maybe we'll just do 5 because we're going to add in more food.
Noor says, do any of you also have to open the fridge to see what you can have as a snack, although you already know what's inside?
Mm-hmm.
Of course. You'll always forget something in your fridge, I feel.
Part of the like process, right? You got to open that fridge
and stare at it.
Stare.
Let us know in the chat if you've used Fresco and if you have any questions about Fresco or any questions about this process. I'm sure there will be more that comes up as Belinda gets further into finalizing this sketch. I just updated Fresco on my iPad. There were a few new features. One of them is that the brushes can get as small as 1 pixel, which is pretty cool. Because I remember doing some detailed stuff and I'm like, oh, 5 is the smallest. And sometimes you just want like a tiny line. And it wasn't getting small enough. So that was good news. And you can also change the scale of your artwork at the top with that little percentage and like drag it to make it larger or smaller. And yesterday, Belinda shared the pinch zoom, which kind of resizes to fit the screen, which is helpful. Yeah, Cody, update your Fresco. Time for updates.
Okay, so for the foods that are being covered, there's the lotus root, the bok choy, the shiitake mushrooms, the enoki mushrooms. We have these little circle things that will be the fish balls, or I guess they could be the, did we say meatballs? Yeah, one or the other. And then tofu. I think if we want to include anything else. Oops, I started drawing on the, oh, don't you hate when that happens? You start drawing on the wrong layer.
I was going to ask you, how often does that happen? Because you were saying how you put everything in separate layers. And I'm like, wow, I really admire how well she does that.
Well, you know, like today, it happened on the wrong layer. But thankfully, we're still early on where I'm not like yelling at my iPad. Because the worst is like when you draw and you finalize your line work and you're like, all right, time to turn off the sketch layer. And it was on the sketch layer the whole time, and you realized you have to start from scratch again.
Yeah, I've done this many times where I had to cut and paste elements from a layer into their own layer and then group them and just like reverse engineer everything. So
Yep.
I think it's happened to everyone.
It does. And if you can kind of check yourself, like, okay, I just finished a sketch. Let me just make sure that it's on the right layers, toggle them a little bit. That tends to help. But sometimes you get so focused, you just forget and then you regret it. And then you get better about it next time because you probably wasted another hour trying to fix it. All right. So I think we have a good start. We've got our food. Generally, we've got our letters. We've got this distribution of different shapes that are surrounding it. And at the end, I will continue with our STEAM theme and I'll add something behind it just to weave that in and out. So this is a good start right here. So the
all
next
of our
thing
streams must be steamy.
They must be steamy. See if I can just group these together. All right. So I can start to refine. And I like that too, that you can group your sketches and even though they're still on separate layers, you can turn down the opacity of the entire group, which is super convenient.
We have two people who just downloaded Fresco, Lucette and Abdelrahman. Lucette says, I just downloaded it. Is it similar to Procreate? Is it better than Illustrator? Better in its own way? Do you recommend it if I like to sketch? Lots of big questions. And now Noor is kind of answering, saying, I think all apps are different. It depends on what you want to do with it. I always tell people to use what you're most at ease with first and then try others. That's great advice. I was going to say something similar. It's, first of all, since you said that you like to sketch, definitely it's great for you. As you can see here, it's great for kind of rough sketching. And then it's also really nice for creating artwork that's like a real painting. So if you like using tools such as the watercolor brush, the oil paint brush, tons of Kyle Webster brushes that are reminiscent of any type of like pencil, inky tool, pastel. You just have a lot of tools at your disposal for creating a realistic piece. So that's always fun to experiment with. And you can export your creation directly into Photoshop to refine it more. I think one of the benefits is that it's all seamlessly integrated with Photoshop. So you can bring it in with your existing layers. Just as it is, everything is preserved when you bring it in there. And a lot of the tools are similar to what you'll find in other Adobe apps. So I think the learning curve is a little less intimidating because the way it's all laid out, the icons, the logic of how things work is just the Adobe way. So you don't have to learn completely new things, but definitely experiment.
So here I'm doing another level of sketching. So it's still not the final, but it's refining what that first sketch is. So you can see I put down some guidelines, on this layer, which is very easy to use with this ruler that you can access in that bottom right corner. And you can get just a nice, angled lines. It stays in the angle for you once you lock it into place. And for me, I just wanted to keep this hay there a little bit more horizontal as opposed to just slightly tilted. The hot stuff I'm not as worried about because I want to just shift the letters a little bit and that just gives it more of a playful effect, but it's really a matter of preference for you, how you want to style up your lettering. For me, I'm thinking, since it is kind of a playful, punny type of phrase, why not make our letters a little bit playful as well? So that's why they're kind of tilting around a little bit.
So this hot word, the letters are made of broth.
Yeah, we're gonna make it out of broth. So they're gonna get a
So
little
it'll be
bit
like,
blobbier.
whoa, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little drippy too. Can add some drips around it.
Abdel Rahman asked if it has a liquify tool or symmetry tool. I think if you look when you're kind of in the homepage of Fresco, or I don't know what it's called, the main, when you first open the app, there is this area where you can see the features that are coming. And I think I saw that a symmetry tool is coming. As far as liquify, I'm not sure if that is part of it.
I've definitely used this smudge tool before to push things around. I usually use that if I want to like blend something together, which is not that frequent for me, but there's that.
I was just Googling like, what's the difference between liquefying and smudging? Because I was going to say the same thing. I've used the smudge tool in Fresco, which is that little hand. So you can use that, see if it achieves what you want to achieve. And also, as Noor is saying, you can bring that into Photoshop. You can save it as a cloud document. You can save it directly as a PSD, and then you can use whatever tools you want to use in Photoshop on something that you started on your iPad. So that's a workflow that I think a lot of us use. We start sketching in Fresco, create a kind of finished piece, and then bring it into Photoshop. If it needs to be exported into different versions, if it needs some more refinement, and that works for a lot of people.
All right, so slightly more even now. And I'm just looking to see how big do I want hot to get. I'm just stretching these around a little bit since they're just my rough sketches, knowing that the style that I'm using here is going to be more of that blobby and perfect lettering shape to mimic the broth splashing around. Okay, so pretty light now. And as you can see, when I start to refine, I usually will tackle the lettering first before doing the illustrations. Even though they are integrated, because there is a message to read, I want to make sure that that is what you see and can read first before you start adding in your illustrations. But it's good to set in the composition as a whole in the beginning, as opposed to doing the lettering and then realizing I need something and adding in illustrations as an afterthought. I found that sketching in the beginning for the illustrations helps to create a much better composition in the end if you start there. Okay, so it looks like it's pretty good to get started to do some of the refinement. We've got our sketch layers of that composition. We've got the sketch layer of our illustrations. I can turn up the opacity just a little bit so I can see the illustrations better, but you can tell I kind of made some adjustments so that the lettering can sit a little bit better. The next thing I'll do before I start refining is similar to yesterday, just create a new layer and we're going to color block. So I will turn this off. I decided because we want to play up that sort of warm family feeling as well as the hot and the temperature feeling, a red or warmer color scheme would make the most sense to communicate that idea. So something like this, I picked this color mainly because I like it. So again, if you're doing something that is your personal work, it's pretty helpful to just start with colors that you like. And then if it makes sense with the concept, perfect. And if it doesn't, then you kind of go from there and figure out what would make more sense. But we've got the warm of the pinks, and then I've got this right here. So these will be our starting colors. Once I put them in there, if they look a little off, I can make adjustments with the lock transparency that we talked about yesterday. And I'm thinking we'll have this red be like the accent color. So that is going to be the spice. It sticks out just like how spiciness in a broth sticks out a lot. So we will play off of that bright red for the sriracha lettering right here. And then if we want to throw in some spices later, because I'm thinking, okay, well, if there's going to be bright red here, maybe we need something bright red to balance it out elsewhere. It could probably be in this heart. And let's just start applying it and see if we need more of that red.
And we're about 30 minutes in, so make sure you're drinking water. I'm going to drink mine.
Mm-hmm. So
Stay
just
hydrated.
Quickly roughing it in.
I think this process is super important because it really gives you an idea of how to group your items, making sure everything's balanced. And I've never done that. I've just done it on the fly. So it was a great lesson to me to see this planning stage.
Yeah, the color blocking I found to be very valuable for me personally, just because, like, you know, I'm very motivated to find ways to cut down my time because I have to spend most of my days with my kids, and then I've got other like chores and freelance work and stuff like that. So when it comes to personal work, I try to find shortcuts, which is why I love digital so much, because there are tons of hacks in Adobe Fresco that you can use to kind of speed that along. And the color blocking has helped me because you think that maybe skipping this step will help you because you're skipping a step. But then what ends up happening for me when I don't plan this is I probably spend 2 hours just toggling colors ever so slightly and then duplicating files and looking at slightly different color schemes and just not being able to make up my mind. So this is good to help you minimize that struggle time.
We are doing an artist spotlight in about an hour. Feel free to nominate yourself or a friend or someone you admire using the artist spotlight right above the chat. And if you haven't caught the beginning of this stream, we're here with Belinda Kou. She's working in Adobe Fresco, and she started out with a sketch that she did with pencil. She took a picture of that, really small sketch, and then brought it in, enlarged it, started drawing over it, started brainstorming of what items to include based on a hot pot. And now we're here where she has kind of the bones of the sketch and she is color blocking. So she has a color palette that she chose and she's just applying the colors around to make sure everything's balanced and the distribution of objects is balanced so that it looks good. It's looking hot. We had a couple of people saying they're just starting to use Fresco. Is there anyone else that is working on a project in Fresco or any project? Let us know what you're working on. Hey, Josh, welcome. Josh Ryan was a guest on Adobe Live pretty recently. I was there with him. That was fun.
Yeah, Josh has 2 really awesome books from his introverted project. They're super relatable. I would encourage everyone to check it out because they're really awesome books. They make you laugh. I got them downstairs. I got them for my husband as a present and then decided I wanted to keep it for myself. It's our books, I guess you could say. They're pretty cool. You can even mail them to friends.
Yeah. And this kind of fits into his theme too, because we were doing love letters last time he was here. Yeah. So this could be a little love letter too. Annika asked if we're participating in the 36 days of type. We talked about that yesterday. So when Belinda illustrated that standalone letter D, that was inspiration for 36 days of type. I am not currently participating. Yesterday, I went back and forth in my head. I'm like, should I do it? But both of us have done it in the past. And maybe I'll make a last minute decision to do it. I haven't yet. I haven't done an A yet.
Definitely a lot of fun. And
Annika says, oh, sorry.
Oh no, I would encourage you to do it if you're kind of thinking that you want to. And a good way to get through all 36 days is if you follow a process similar to this, where you sketch most of your ideas up front. That way, once you're on that day, rather than staring at a blank canvas thinking, what should I do for the letter C? You already have a rough sketch to start from. And I found that helped me to keep going when I did it the last time.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Even if it's just a pencil sketch that you took a picture of, it's so much more helpful than staring at a white canvas.
Definitely.
Annika says, I'm working on an oil portrait series in Fresco. I love how the live brushes work. That's awesome. Do you have anything posted to your Behance, Annika, from that series? Oh, I opened your Behance and I see a few portraits. That's cool. Steve says, I'm jonesing to try Fresco, but I need to get an iPad. And to get that, I need to get some money. Mm-hmm. It's true. You do need an iPad. That is one of the prerequisites. Asif says hi. Hi, Asif. Josh and Golden Rose say, doing a sketch ahead of time is much better. Yes, do all your brainstorming up front. Very true.
All right. So as I'm color blocking, I am thinking I want more of that bright red. So you can see very roughly, I dropped in what can be good for bright red, which is like chilies. So I'm going back into my rough sketches just to make sure I don't forget that object when I'm actually doing the final. And then I also saw I put an orange because at the time I was thinking we can put some shrimp in here. I forgot about that. Shrimp. What do you think? Do you think we should add some shrimp in our hot pot?
Yes, definitely.
All right, let's do it.
Belinda, have you used a Wacom tablet?
Yes, that was how I first started drawing, was Wacom I don't know how to say it, Wacom?
Every time I say it, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying it right.
I don't know. So my first foray into digital anything was that plus Photoshop. And does anyone in this chat, did you ever use DeviantArt? Like the DeviantArt days?
Oh, yeah. Let us know if you ever used DeviantArt.
Oh my gosh. I think my account is actually still up too. But it's not under my name, so you can't find it. I used that. And then once I discovered the iPad, I realized drawing directly to screen is so much easier. I never had a chance to try out the Cintiqs because they were so much pricier at the time. And then eventually I thought the iPad might be better because it also has like Netflix and stuff on it. So
yeah, when I first got an iPad, it was to use these kinds of tools way before Fresco existed. At the time, Adobe had developed some precursors to Sketch and Draw, and I was testing them out. And I realized that even though I bought it for that reason, I ended up using it mostly to watch things. I'm like, oh, now I can watch things in my bed or on my couch.
So much
I'm
easier.
like, don't only use this for Netflix. Cody says, way back in the day, yes, I have my old art on DeviantArt. Colleen says, heck yes. Be Creative said, is that still around? LOL. A lot of people were on DeviantArt.
It was pretty fun at the time.
And MySpace.
Oh yeah, MySpace too. All right, so pretty much there. I'd say I can turn off my sketch layer and just double check, like, does this seem decent? Yeah, sure, let's start from here. And then once we get into more of the final phase, we could decide if there's anything else we want to add once we're done refining. But I think our color block is pretty good. And I'll just put those into a group. And hope I got all my colors together here. And turn that off. And we're going to get into refining now. So I started these two just so that I wouldn't forget about them in the line work.
Vegas says, I'm very embarrassed when I open my DeviantArt. Some old stuff.
It's nice to see where you've come from though, right? Like you used to
Yeah.
be drawing like this and also interested in those topics, and now it's very different. So I think if you're embarrassed and you look at your old stuff, it's good because it meant you got a lot better.
Josh says, GeoCities for the win. Everyone's remembering the old, what they used to do on the internet.
GeoCities. Oh my gosh. Yep.
Download some music from LimeWire.
Getting
log
those
into
viruses.
your MySpace. Yeah, get a few viruses. Back then, wasn't as harmful as the viruses we have today.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That was my non-funny joke. Go on MSN, chat with your friends. In Europe, we had High Five, which was kind of like MySpace. If anyone was, I was in Greece at the time as a teenager. If anyone was on High Five, please let me know because no one remembers it when I talk about it. So Josh is asking a question related to our subject matter so we can get back on topic. How important is having good reference to your drawing? Also, should I go get Hot Pot for my own reference?
Yes. So the best way to study for your food-related drawings is to eat it. Consume it and then put it out there on paper. No, so I definitely like to say that you can buy the food, find the food, eat the food for research purposes. And then if you don't know how to draw something, it's definitely great to just pull up Google and search for them so that you can find inspiration for what kind of food items to include and also how to draw them. For this one, I do have a couple of references that I had initially looked up on Google and then just quickly sketched it out. But for the most part, we're working with fairly simple shapes today. So there's not too much that you have to look up how to draw. The one that I wasn't as sure of was how many holes does a lotus root have, which I literally Googled. That was my Google entry. And then also how to draw bok choy. So here, I think I can show you in a little bit, but I managed to sketch that and use a cool trick in Adobe Fresco to use as a reference. But that's just a preview. I forgot I should probably get into refining my lettering. I got caught up in drawing what was in the pot because I was thinking about the food.
Yeah, let's get to the lettering. Make sure that's all good.
Yep.
Mikhail, yes, you can use Photoshop brushes in Fresco. So you can download all of those brushes into Fresco. Annika said, OMG, High Five is the real throwback. Thanks, Annika. I'm so glad you remember it. Did you have an account? Colleen says, love me some bok choy. Cody says, my snack today is edamame. I'm glad you are snacking and you came prepared.
All right, so this is how I'm drawing my sriracha. I'm just going around the sketch layer and I'm making it blobbier. And that will be the same approach I will use for hot stuff.
Sounds good. So blobby.
And how blobby you want it to be depends on you, really.
Laura is asking what brush you're using right now.
I am currently using a brush from Kyle Webster's collection. I think it's the Inkbox collection. It's called Amazing Cartoon Nibs Small, or maybe it was in the Mega Pack. It might be in here somewhere. Yeah. I don't always remember because there's so many, and I just add them to my favorites.
Yeah. And when you open Fresco for the first time, you already have a bunch. More than I could ever use in there. Hi, Mayam. Welcome. If you're just joining, we are here with Belinda Kou working in Fresco, and she is creating a lettering phrase based on hot pot. So she is doing the hey there. The hey there is going to be sriracha, so that's why it's got kind of a sriracha look to it. And feel free to ask any questions about using Fresco, about lettering or illustration, being a freelancer. She talked earlier about her non-linear career. So there's showing that there's a lot of options. If you're in a career that maybe you're not as happy and you're thinking of freelancing, you can ask Belinda how she got to this point. Mayam asked, can you make your own brushes? I've never done that. Have you made your own, Belinda?
I haven't yet. It's actually on my to-do list to look into more of that because you can customize the existing brushes the way that you like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I know you can, and it's pretty cool. Like there's, you can do whatever you want basically when you make your own brushes.
I used to make, actually, I say I've never done it. Back a couple of years ago, I used the Capture app to make brushes because you can take a picture of something and then you make it into a brush and then you can use it in Photoshop. So like you could take a picture of a leaf and it turns into a brush and then you can draw using that. So that's a pretty cool and easy way to do it.
Yes.
Laura says Kyle Webster has some streams where he shows the process of doing it. So definitely check those out. I'm sure there's a lot of replays of Kyle's streams.
So I'm filling this in, but because I'm using a textured pixelated brush, you can see it's got a little bit of that around it. Mm-hmm. So this was mentioned yesterday, but if you go to your fill settings and you just increase that color margin, it should help it. And you just toggle it until it reaches the setting that you like. It's slightly better. And if it's not great, then I'll go back in there and just fill it in a little bit more. It's slightly better, so it's not too bad. And sometimes I just like scribble a little bit.
Looks pretty good.
Kind of depends on how much you want to leave in too. Like if you need it to be perfectly solid, I've seen you can use like a vector brush to do that instead so that the fill is really clean. Mm-hmm. But I always like a little bit of that texture on the outside, so I'm okay with some texture inside.
I like the exit stroke of the E right here.
This guy?
Yeah.
Little blob.
Looks really good.
Sometimes I'll just add like that right there too, so it looks like a little bit of a splatter of the sriracha is like coming off. And like here you can go into and decide, do I want my letter? It's sriracha, but it's getting a little melted by the steam. So you can like kind of where it dips, make little blobs where it looks like it's about to fall off. All right, so that's a good start. If I want to go back in there and fix some things, I can do that later, but I think hey there seems good to me. So let's do hot and stuff. I think that was a little bit harder to fill. I can try something that has maybe a slightly smoother line, because with the broth, I don't want it to be as textury.
Josh is asking, Belinda, where do you fall on the Chicago versus New York pizza debate?
Oh, am I allowed to say this? Because I'm hands down New York style pizza.
Oh,
To
controversial.
be fair, I lived in Michigan before I came to Chicago, which is a little bit closer to New York, I guess. Actually, that's a bad argument. I really just like thin crust type pizza. The more flavor, the better. Chicago style pizza, usually when I eat it, I feel really bad afterwards. So that's why I don't like it as much. I'm gonna try using.
It's a full meal to have a piece of deep dish pizza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like one piece and you're good.
That's the most controversy you'll see here, folks. We're a very friendly show. Oh, I like that H.
Yeah, so I jumped into vector brushes because I decided I didn't want as much of a rough texture to the hot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels really cleanly, as you can see.
Yeah, so there were a couple questions in the chat about vector brushes. So you can see that there's 3 types of brushes on the top left, and the one that she has selected now is the vector brush. The one right above that is live brushes, so watercolor and oil, and the one above that is pixel brushes. So there's both raster and vector in this tool, which is really helpful for achieving different looks that you need. And whoever is thinking about trying these different brushes, just jump right in there, experimenting with them, and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? Steve says, if a Chicago pizza is undercooked, it's soup. That is true. It's like if you here, and a lot of places where they serve clam chowder, they serve it in a bread bowl. So what's the difference between having a crust with tomato sauce in it versus having clam chowder in a bread bowl? It's basically both soup.
Yep. I mean, I think just on occasion, you'll find yourself in the mood for that kind of pizza. So
yeah, definitely. But it's not like an every week sort of craving.
No, yeah.
Or every day.
Definitely not.
So you can see the countdown right here. We have our artist spotlight coming up in half an hour. And if you want to nominate yourself or someone else for this, you can use the artist spotlight tab right above the chat. So I'm excited for you all to see who we're going to spotlight today and take a look at their work.
Oops. I'm trimming my T a little bit because I think it's too wide compared to the H. So just to cut that off a little bit. And then we should be good.
So you're holding down the what's it called?
It's like the touch shortcut and that
Yeah,
bottom
the touch
left.
shortcut. So
Yeah.
for those of you that didn't notice, she's holding down that touch shortcut to make her brush into an eraser, which is a great time saver.
Yes, definitely. Because then you're not jumping trying to find the matching brush under eraser. You're just erasing with the same brush, which is really nice with the pixel ones too, because there's so many of them. All right, so we've got, hey there, hot stuff. Let's color them now. So I'm just gonna lock the transparency to make sure that, oops, for this one, to make sure that I don't accidentally fill outside of it. I'll just take a big fat brush like this one, go back to my color palette and select that bright red and see what it looks like.
What does everyone think? Does it look good?
All right, so there's a base. Looking pretty good. Sometimes if I feel like it needs more contrast, I might either adjust the letter color to be something more saturated or darker, or adjust the background color and just kind of toggle it until it reaches a nice balance. For now, I think it works. We'll stay there. Okay, so now we start adding some highlights to give it some more dimension. And typically what I do is I'll do like a slightly brighter color and see how that looks. And I have it on a clipping mask so that I can adjust that highlight color or adjust the opacity to something that makes it easier for me to make changes later. So that's why it's on a separate layer. And we'll pretend that the light source is coming from here.
Laura asked if you have a YouTube channel.
I don't, but I hope I will one day. It's just very difficult to record lots of videos like that and have someone who, if I can find someone who can edit videos for me, then yes, I'll have one. Right now, I don't have the time.
Yeah,
or the capacity.
that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Lucette says, I see how everything on different layers can give you more creative freedom to change anything later. That's so cool.
It's really nice too, because say further down the line, you decide either maybe you have a new color palette that you like to work with, or you decide that the color choices that you made of your old piece doesn't work as well anymore. You can go back in and change them pretty easily if you keep all your colors on different layers.
And even these highlights you have on a different layer so that maybe later you want to make it brighter. And then that won't change other things.
Like sometimes if I can't figure out the colors, I like to play with the blend modes, and you can just, see how it blends a little bit with the color. Overlay is often a go-to of mine for adding subtle highlights. Because it, as you can see what the difference is now that I have it on overlay. Or I'll just go in here and decide maybe I want this to be just like a little bit more subtle. Yeah. And then I can go on it again and add sharper highlights. Like so,
Yeah, it looks so realistic now. Okay, I'm getting hungry. Let's been, hour into the stream. That's about right. So Belinda, you talked about how you've done so many different things career-wise, but when you were young, like in school, were you interested in art and an artistic child?
Yeah, I've always been pretty interested in drawing. So, like, you would catch me as a kid. I'm more of an introverted person, so I don't like to, stay with large groups of people for too long. So I'd be that person who would like kind of step aside, and I'd have a sketchbook and I'd just kind of doodle in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like draw things. I used to draw a lot of trees. And then in high school, I used to draw a ton of eyes for some reason because I was really obsessed with drawing eyes.
I used to draw eyes on every notebook, everything I had in high school. That's so funny.
That is funny. Like, if you can find my DeviantArt, there are eyes in there.
Okay, chat, everybody go try to find Belinda's DeviantArt.
I don't even know if I have my name under there.
Do you have a name that you went by?
No. You know how like you have different usernames for like Insta Messenger and stuff?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but the name that I went by for DeviantArt was something I had made up because back in the day I used to have like this random dream of like writing this like fantasy novel that was essentially a Lord of the Rings knockoff because I was incredibly obsessed with that movie. And my DeviantArt was, I think I had changed it to a name of a place that I had made up.
Lucette says, I do the same. I always find myself drawing eyes. My eye drawings when I was in high school had the most crazy eyelashes and like crazy eyebrows that were very extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And I found some old notebooks last year and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was always just one, like I could never do the left eye.
Yes.
You can only do one side. You would see like me trying to do a whole face and then the other eye is just all crooked and weird, but the one eye is perfect.
I think that, me too. Just single eye, because I think it's because of the way your hand can go when you're drawing with your dominant hand. It goes in that direction, and that's the direction of the eye that you make.
Yeah, I wonder if left-handed people were drawing the other side, left eyes. Paco says, oh man, don't get me started with Lord of the Rings obsession in the early 2000s.
Ooh, yes. Another it's like funny to watch it again now though, because you see how different, like how much cinema has changed since then, and like the filters that they put in certain like Rivendell was just like, you look at it now and you're like, oh, that was very yellow filter. But it was such a good movie series.
Yeah, that was pretty iconic. And also it was my mom, when she was growing up, she was obsessed with the books and loved the series. And then when we were growing up, the movies came out. So I feel like it was, for all generations, it was really exciting at that time.
Yeah, it was very nice. I even, I'm like, do I share this on live stream or not? But I have the One Ring or an iteration of it. I don't even know where I found it, probably like Etsy or something, but I have a version of it that has like the scripture on top of it. I used to wear that every day.
Should we do a lettering stream with runes next time? How do you write this in runes?
I don't know. I'd have to look at just a bunch of like tilted scribbles.
Just pretend it is. Just tilt everything.
But yeah, I guess you could say the drawing tendency has always been there. And I didn't really recognize that it could become a thing until much later. Like, I didn't know about graphic design until after I graduated. So I didn't think that that could be a thing for me until after I graduated.
Yeah, same with me. I think I was encouraged to take art all throughout high school because I was so interested in it, but I didn't see a career reason to do that.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I can always paint and draw in my own spare time. I don't need to take art classes. What else am I going to do? So, yeah, discovering graphic design and all the illustration, you can have a great career doing illustration itself as well. That was kind of a light bulb moment for me, like, oh, I should have done that.
Yeah, you
I
just
didn't.
It's like you don't really realize it's a thing that you can do until you see other people doing it.
And I think it's great to see, you know, even with these live streams, for people to watch other creative people in their process and see people that might look like them or be from the same place that they are, because it's important to see someone doing something and make you think you could do it.
Definitely.
Paco says, I used to own some of the replica swords. From
Not the only one who's obsessed in the stream. I feel good.
And then Ferry says, I remember when I silently wore my brother's wedding ring and felt like I had a superpower. I can imagine him like secretly finding the ring and putting it on.
All right, I'm feeling pretty good about the lettering now. So we've got a good start. It's got some highlights, some shadows. If you want to keep going, the more you add, the more dimensional it will get. But this is a good start for me. And then we'll start doing some more of the illustrations.
Awesome.
And here's, oh, you had mentioned the Adobe Capture. So I had done that for some of the stuff that I said was a little harder to draw. So when I referenced it, I just sketched it in my sketchbook and then took a picture of it on my phone with the app. And now I have the lotus that has the right number of holes, which they said 7 for my Google search. So that's what I drew, I think, or at least around the sides, and then a little one in the middle, a shrimp for reference, and then the bok choy for reference. So it's pretty nice because then you can just take it and then you can see it's right here. It's in vector form too.
I'm so glad you're using these shapes, because this is an amazing feature that you can illustrate something, even if it's just on a sketchbook with your pencil, and then capture the image using the Adobe Capture app. And then that's added to your libraries. So even if you're in one of the desktop apps, wherever you are and you access your library, it'll show those shapes. And you can also add these shapes to a specific one. Like Belinda, she named this Adobe Live so that she could find it while she was doing her live stream. And then you just, it's kind of like stamping.
It is, yeah. Really cool. I kind of treat it like a stamp. And then, you know, if I don't want it to be perfectly exact and look like it's stamped, I'll just tone down that opacity and draw on top of it. But at least I have a reference for me. So it's really nice when you've got super complex layers that you might draw a lot. Like, you know, for me, I was like, what does a lotus root look like? I have that for reference now, always.
Yeah, and you can rotate them different ways, draw over them, erase part of it, and redo it so that they don't all look the same.
Yeah.
Colleen says, whoa, such a time saver. It's true. When I discovered this, I was very excited because I didn't know. I thought it was just those basic shapes. And I saw a tutorial that showed this.
Pretty nice. I think what I'll do is I'm just going to duplicate them and move them around a little bit.
So we have 15 minutes till the artist spotlight. And at that time, I'm going to share that artist's website. And then we'll have some time left over at the end. So another 15 minutes to finish this. So the time is passing super fast.
Yeah, it's gone by quickly.
Yeah.
And if this one's not finished, I'm planning on posting it later this month, so you'll be able to see the final piece on my Instagram.
Those of you in the chat that have seen Belinda's Instagram and Behance profile, what's your favorite artwork that you've seen her do or series?
I want to move this.
I really liked the one that was based on the Mulan song.
Oh, yeah.
Will my reflection show what I ate last night? Is that what it's?
Yeah.
Every time I see that, I can't help singing. I'm like, when will my reflection show? It just takes me back.
Yep. I was really excited to have come up with that because Mulan was a harder one for me to think of. Because I was like, I want noodles and I want Mulan. And I was like, how do we make this come together? And it was hitting around Thanksgiving time. So what did I eat last night was when I was thinking, oh yeah, I usually do wonder that after a Thanksgiving meal. So
yeah, it's not an obvious, like when we think of Mulan, the obvious ones are like the warrior song and but I love the reflection song. Lucette says, I like the recent one, the N made of noodles.
Oh yeah, the noodly N.
Noodly N. Hi, Afroja. Welcome. We're here in Fresco with Belinda. And she lettered this phrase, and now she is showing how to use the shape tool to import some shapes that she got from Adobe Capture. She's able to just bring those in directly.
And I'm toggling between my color blocking and where I'm placing these objects so I can kind of remember where I put them all.
I was reading a while ago about the first pioneers in fast food advertising and how they made fast food TV ads much more engaging by making the food fly. And you reminded me of that because even though this is static, it still has that aspect to it that makes you more excited. And once I read about that, every time I happen to be watching a commercial for Burger King or whatever, you always see like the bun on the bottom and then the burger falls and then like bacon falls on it or like something flies into the air. And it's just the way that they make the food look more exciting.
Those are fun to watch too. I've seen some videos on TikTok where you can I think they're like advertising companies who do filming for that kind of stuff. And some of them do it like for real as opposed to just a digital construction. It's one that I saw was s'mores and they had, actually, I saw that somewhere else, but it was like s'mores where they had the chocolate piece and the graham cracker piece and the marshmallow all like melty. And then they just slowly move it together and did like 10, 50 different takes until they got the right smush. But, and then they removed the gears that they used.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I would agree. It's pretty fun to watch those. And I bet that is part of my influence too. And like all the commercials back in the day.
Yeah.
When we used to actually sit through commercials when we were watching our favorite TV shows.
I enjoy it now if I happen to be watching real TV, which is rare. I'm like, oh, commercials.
Yeah. Because those are still an art form. I'm gonna turn this back on again so you can see.
Robert says your purple work on Instagram is his favorite.
Oh, that section.
The purple section.
The purple section. I've got like little sections now. Yeah, those are fun. It's a color scheme that I do like to work in sometimes. I find that if I get, because this is a pretty common color scheme that I use on my Instagram, is like these sort of muted reds and teals.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then purple comes back.
So you must have a pretty well-defined process for posting on Instagram, since you have that color scheme and you also post your work on other platforms. So you were saying that once you would be finished with this, you would take it into Photoshop and export different formats. Do you have like predefined sizes that it makes it easier? Like, how do you streamline that process?
Yeah, so like Photoshop, I'll have a file that's saved as a default file size for Instagram, and then a default file size for like Dribbble and Pinterest. So I find those specs online, I save it forever in Photoshop, and once I'm ready, I can just pop this in as a smart object in Photoshop and size things as I need to, because it's usually smaller anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the asset creation part is pretty streamlined now at this point. And then everything else.
How do you store all these assets so that you don't get confused with going back?
I store them. I don't know. My organization system for files is not that great yet. I'm trying to figure that out, but I usually save them as Photoshop files, just ordered by date with like the name. Like this will be under Adobe and then the date of today, and probably labeled "Hey there, hot stuff" or "Hot pot illustration," something that I can easily find it by.
Mm-hmm. Ferry asked if you ever get too emotional when you're working on your drawing.
I don't think I do, actually. But like, are you thinking positive emotions or negative emotions?
I'm just imagining you crying.
Oh gosh, I know.
This is so beautiful.
No, my emotion is more on the side of angry. Like, why isn't it working? What's in my head is not communicating what is on this canvas. How do I get it there? So my emotions would be mainly frustration and struggle and like feeling a little bit overwhelmed.
I think that's the most common emotion.
Right.
Do you ever abandon something because you just don't think it's going anywhere?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Not as often as I used to, which was like all the time back in the day. But yeah, there are times when you just look at it and you're like, you know what, this isn't going to work. And you can either abandon it permanently, or for me, usually it's just, I'm going to set this aside. I'll come back to it later. And maybe later I'll have a better idea or a different approach that makes it more interesting. But giving your art space, I think, helps a lot to overcome some of that struggle.
Yeah.
Like even yesterday's piece, I looked at it this morning and I thought, you know what? I think we should add some more chili peppers in there, which we didn't do yesterday, but I didn't notice that until looking at it with fresh eyes today. So there'll probably be more of that when I share it later this week.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the final thing. Robert says, why not use your color schema to organize your files?
I've never thought about doing it that way, but I guess if I wanted to, like, you know how Picasso has his color phases and stuff? I never thought to organize it that way. That'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Do you have all the colors predetermined and you just apply them? Like, how far in advance do you plan that?
For my Hungrily Ever After series, it was just the background color was predetermined. So I opened up a canvas and I just created, I knew I was going to do 18 pieces. So I created 18 squares and figured out what that gradient was going to pan out as.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it got time to draw it, like Mulan I knew was going to be yellow, I had that background color picked, and then I chose what colors would fit with it based on the background color.
Makes sense. We have our artist spotlight in 4 minutes.
All right, so now I'm just coloring. Getting our reds in place. And eventually we'll start filling out the rest of the foods.
Have you ever used the color.adobe.com to find
Yes.
color palettes?
I have used that before. It's pretty nice to, when you're kind of really struggling with what color combos to use, it's a nice place to go to get inspiration from.
Let us know in the chat if you've used that. I was just thinking about color palettes because these colors are working so well together in this composition, but it's not always easy to come up with the combination. And it seems like you always use a little bit of a pastel, or you always add a little bit of white to your colors.
Yeah, they're a little bit more, they're not like heavily saturated colors. Maybe there's one like this red is the most saturated in this color palette.
Thanks, Cody. I have the link in the chat to the color website. And one thing I talked about a little bit yesterday, we didn't use fonts in this composition, but if you want to add text, we have a text tool in Fresco. So you can see it to the left, it's the little T. And even if you're just illustrating or doing hand lettering and you want to get inspiration from different fonts, maybe you want to start with typing something in a font and then having another layer and using that as your reference. There's so many options, but you can use that text tool. And then if you have a full Creative Cloud subscription, you get all 18,000 Adobe fonts available to you to use right within the app. So that's a huge value add, I think. And we work with hundreds of partners that are different foundries that create these commercially available fonts, and they're all included in your subscription. So definitely take advantage of that when you're using Fresco. All right, 10 seconds till the artist spotlight. I'm like nervous for some reason when I see this countdown.
You're just programmed to get, and it's in red too. I'm just noticing it right now. Hurry up, finish.
So I'm going to share my screen that's going to have the artist spotlight on it. Let me just make sure that's all shared. Okay. And here we are. So our artist is Colleen Makes. Yay, Colleen. Yay. Congrats for being shown here. It's exciting to be able to see your work. So this is the home page. I really like how she's laid out her site, because the first thing you see is a little example of her work, and it's so personal to me. I feel like I'm right at her desk, because I even see her earrings on the right. I see her pencils. It just makes me feel like she welcomed me into her space and showed me a little about herself. And then there's a couple examples of her artwork that you can buy. And she's an illustrator for ethical and sustainable brands. And then there's some examples of her work again here. I'm just going to go to the About page so we can see a little about her. And it's great also that this website is really helpful for clients. They can just go straight here and see, like, how can I help you? And they know immediately what she can do. And then she has an endorsement here, her process for clients. She's based in Chicago.
Woo-hoo.
Do you know each other, Belinda?
Yes. So Colleen has a really great, I think she's got a really great sense of color palette for her brand, as well as these design graphics and illustrations. They're all very distinct and creative, just taking simple shapes, but making illustrations from it that are both beautiful and meaningful. And she's also got this podcast called Eco Sassy, which is a great way to continue promoting sustainability in businesses and for entrepreneurs. And it's always with a side of sass. So it's kind of a fun, entertaining, yet educational listen. So I think she's got a really great, brand going on for her business.
Yeah. Very cool. And then she has her portfolio here as well. We can take a look, more of a deep dive into her work. So I see mural. Wow, that's huge. Very pretty.
Yeah, that really pretty flourishes on it.
Oh, I want that.
One beautiful
I don't even have a
garage.
I need a garage first, and then I'll ask Colleen to paint on it.
Got some cool GIF animations there. They're like subtle yet really interesting.
Yeah, it makes it so much more engaging. Oh, there's so many to choose from. I want to click on some of them. Let's see. Plastic repellent.
That's clever.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and the lettering is super on point too. Just really cool styles.
Yeah, I love this reverse contrast script. It's beautiful. Reclaiming my time. Love that. As you said, the color palette is really pretty, and the illustrations complement the lettering super well. And I think, as I said earlier, it's just so well geared towards a client coming on here, or someone who just doesn't really know what they want. It's guiding them straight towards how to contact her and what she's about. So you get a really good sense of her just visiting this. So I'm noticing this one is funny because she's misspelled nothing.
It's like subtle, clever, you know, just a little cleverness in the play of the copy
Yeah.
that I feel like makes her artwork more interesting because it's not just beautiful, but the copywriting has also got a little bit of that clever play or sass to it.
Yeah. And Colleen has been with us today in the chat. So thanks for being here. We love your work.
Thanks for joining.
This is great. Yeah. And she has a shop as well. The plant killer. That's so cool.
Very millennial. I'm definitely a plant killer. I wish I wasn't.
I have a lot of plants, so I feel like it's just statistically some of them are going to die, but I wouldn't call myself a plant killer. I wouldn't say that's my main characteristic. I try to keep most of them alive.
Yeah.
But Colleen, how do you create your GIFs? Let us know what your process is for that. It is so pretty, and as you said, it's so subtle, but adds a lot of interest to the piece. And also let us know what clients you've gotten, because this is something that I would expect to see, like if I'm reading an online article, sometimes they embellish it with GIFs like this. Like, have you had any of those kind of clients that we might have seen your work in? And definitely follow her everywhere that she is. We've got all these different platforms. It's time for you to create a Behance page, Colleen. I don't see it here. Maybe you have one.
Yeah, I think she has one.
Or
it's
put it on here.
An icon that's not on there. Yeah.
But I also love the logo. It's just so cohesive of like putting your own identity into the brand and creating such a nice cohesive brand. So awesome work. And we're happy to have you on the stream. We can jump back into Belinda's work. And we will go back into the hot pot, into the steamy, spicy hot pot.
Yeah. Theme to be included at the very end.
Ooh.
Which, if it doesn't happen in this live, you will see it on my Instagram. So we will get back to coloring in all of our yummy items of food.
Colleen said she uses the Photoshop timeline to create those GIFs.
That's cool. So it's like frame by frame GIF
Yes.
animations. The style looks really nice.
Lucette says, "Oh, you have patience, Colleen." And she says, "It's a labor of love." We've got our bok choy.
Yep. Got to add some of those greens to this hot pot.
Indeed. How do you get your kids to eat greens? Are they pretty open to it?
It's very hit or miss with them. I have tried all the ways, just Googling things on like mom blogs and stuff on how to sneak greens into your kids' meals. It's a pretty popular search, I think, but my kids like broccoli, so that's good. They will mostly eat broccoli. They will not eat bok choy. I've tried many times cutting it into tiny pieces, and like even spinach, I'll blend those into smoothies, and that's a good way to sneak it in. But Chinese vegetables, they have yet to, or just like any kind of Asian type of vegetable, they have yet to enjoy. Maybe when they're older.
Golden Rose says, "I love the lettering. A little wobbly so that it's steamy looking."
Yep, we've got our sriracha and our broth. They're up in the air.
And we're just going to abandon this. We won't be cleaning it up. Someone else needs to clean it up.
Nope. Yep.
All the broth and everything else, just who knows what's going to happen in the aftermath of this illustration.
I know. If this were one of the food advertisements that you had talked about, it would be quite the cleanup.
Mm-hmm. I'd be one of those people that's like the cleanup crew, but I also feel bad throwing away the food and I'll just eat it even though it fell on the floor. I'll be like secretly eating it. Those of you in the chat, do any of you do lettering? What's your main form of creativity? Is it lettering, illustration? Do you mostly work in vector art? Let us know. What are you trying to work on more? If you are watching us on YouTube, come over to Behance and tell us. Fairy says photo compositing. Cool. Fairy, have you been following the Photoshop daily creative challenges? Those are every morning Pacific time at 9 a.m. with Paul Trani. So he was right before us. He'll be here tomorrow as well. And today he was working with shapes and text in Photoshop and creating a cool composition. Golden Rose says, I dabble with it all, LOL, because I'm learning. So I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That's kind of how I am. I'm trying to learn different techniques and all the tools, but it's a lot to learn.
Yeah. Do we have any favorite Adobe programs?
Yeah,
this is definitely one of mine.
Me too.
Photoshop.
Jimmy says, I've focused on logo design in the past, but I'm now getting into illustration.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Logo design is pretty difficult. Viola says, I'm freelancing as an editorial designer, mostly InDesign, loving Illustrator right now. Cody says Photoshop and Fresco for me. Golden says Fresco's my favorite because I use it the most. I think I use Fresco and Illustrator the most. I learned Illustrator first, and it's always been my most comfortable place to be. I kind of know where everything is. So I like using it. Even if it's stuff that most people would use Photoshop for, I'm like, oh, I'll just use Illustrator because I feel like at home in it.
All right, cross-checking with the color blocking and realizing I forgot the tofu. I will add that in.
Oh.
It will make its way into the final piece.
Yes. So we have about 11 minutes till we have to say bye. So
all right,
there's just a few minutes left. So let us know if you have any last questions for Belinda or last questions about Fresco and her process before we wrap up. Robert says he also does web design, so Dreamweaver, Photoshop, Illustrator, and Fresco. That's a lot.
So the remainder of this composition will just be me going through and finishing up the coloring. I'll probably make a change to the line art as well because it's black right now, but I'm thinking I want maybe something that's slightly darker than the background, but not as contrasty as the black to use. So it could be like a brown or something. And then I'll go back in and adjust some of the places where things are overlapping. And once that's done, the remaining piece would just be adding some more tofu, maybe a few elements to fill in some more spaces, creating this theme, and then it'll be a final piece that you will see later this month on my Instagram.
Awesome. It sounds so easy.
Well, not everyone knows the process, though.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it, but I think you've shown how you can streamline it a lot and plan certain things so that you set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
So it's been really helpful for me personally to see your process. I'm sure for our friends in the chat, and they're already we've had a few people that never used Fresco and are interested in using it.
Awesome.
Like Jimmy says, I've never looked into Fresco. What are the main uses and advantages? Looking great, by the way. Thanks, Jimmy. I'm saying on behalf of Belinda. We've talked about all the main advantages of Fresco if you replay a little bit earlier, but I think you should just go in and try all the different kinds of brushes, raster and vector and live brushes. And the best way is just to experiment with what's there. So you can download it for free. It's easy. Go in there and draw to your heart's content.
Yeah, I will say when I was a total Fresco newbie, the first thing I went to were the live brushes because I wanted to, they were so different from any other program. So I really wanted to look and see what they did. They're pretty cool, especially if you've got that painting background or the oil, the oil painting and things like that.
Yeah, if you look on my Fresco documents, like the first ones are just scribbles of oil paint and scribbles of watercolor.
Yes, and you can like add the water to it or mix the oils together. Super cool.
Hi, Bernadette from Scotland. Welcome.
Ooh, coming in from Scotland. Very cool.
Yeah.
I love how everyone is all over the world. It's really fun to chat together like that.
It is. And for those of you that are joining now, we have more coming up. So stick around to join Andrea Marquez. She's a UI UX designer. She's going to be coming on at 12 p.m. Pacific. So in the next 40 minutes, and she'll design and prototype an interactive motivational guide in Adobe XD. That's one tool that we haven't really talked about today. Let us know if you've used Adobe XD. And then later this afternoon at 2:30 Pacific, there's going to be the second part of Shanti Sparrow's Creative Encore. And Creative Encore is really cool because you can watch at a time that's convenient for you, and you can still participate in the chat. So highly recommend you stay tuned for those and watch replays. There's tons of replays for you to watch, either of Belinda on day one or maybe Paul Tranny's Photoshop Creative Challenges. There's a lot that's shown, below this video that you're watching that you can explore. Anthony says, working with raster and vector brushes in Fresco at the same time is really cool. I totally agree.
Definitely.
Hi, Meyer. Fabio says, lovely work. Thank you, Fabio.
Thank you.
Kevin asked if you can use a mouse to create with Fresco. You are on your iPad or your Windows tablet, so maybe if you had a mouse connected somehow. I don't know if you can use a mouse with tablets, but the best way is to use an Apple Pencil or any kind of stylus that you use. Lucette, thank you so much for joining. And she says, I love your work, Belinda.
Oh, thank
New
you so
followers
much.
also inspired me to use Fresco. I'll remember you.
Amazing. I hope you love it because it's a cool program.
Oh, yes. I was wondering if the stems of the bok choy would be a different color.
Yeah, you're going to be a little bit of that lighter color. I'm using a spatter brush just to have this nice little texture at the end of them because it kind of fades into the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
Got some of that.
Ritvik says, what are the tips you can give to people just starting out on Fresco? It looks amazing. Do you have any like one tip to give?
Yeah, well, if you've never tried the live brushes, try them out because they're fun. And I really love the favorites section for the brushes. So you can, because there's so many brushes that you can start with and you might not be able to keep track of which ones you like. So being able to star them is a really nice way to keep track of your brushes. And then, I mean, the Adobe Capture is a great tool to use. So if you've already created artwork somewhere else, you can try downloading that app, take a piece of, or take a picture of that art piece, especially if it's mostly line work. You can use that to bring it into here and kind of play around with this new feature.
Yeah, that shape feature is clutch.
It's fun.
It makes it so much easier.
And it's nice too, because if you're going out for a walk and you see something really interesting, you could snap a photo and it could become a really cool texture based on what you were able to pick up with that image and manipulate in that app. So I think that's pretty cool, and it's different from other apps I've used too.
So thanks, Cody, for posting Belinda's Instagram and Behance pages. Definitely follow her there. You'll be seeing yesterday's piece, the D, and today's hot pot piece show up pretty soon. I'm excited to see the final ones. And it's great that we had input from the chat. So I feel like you all were part of the process. And we're all in this community eating hot pot together.
Yeah, it's a virtual hot pot lunch.
Yeah. So we only have a couple minutes, so we'll see this final piece come up on your Instagram at some point, and we'll all be very excited. Make sure to like and comment and say, I was there when you were making this.
Yeah, I would love to hear if you were there.
Yeah. And I want to thank everyone who was here. Mayur, Bernadette, Robert, Cody, Laura, Colleen, Luzette, Noor, Anthony, Jimmy, so many of you that were here today and came back since yesterday. So thank you for being here both days.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Belinda, it was so nice having you. What did you think?
It was great.
Live?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Was it a friendly community?
Yeah, definitely.
A safe space.
Safe space for sure. Yeah, it was nice seeing them like just chat it up. Oh, you need a screen share. Okay.
So yes, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you again soon, and make sure to stay tuned for Andrea Marquez a little bit later today. Thanks, Belinda.
Thank you, everyone.